Hello viewers and welcome back to Combat Mission Battlefront Normandy. As always, I'm your host Pew Pew Choo Choo, and today we're checking out the campaign missions from the newly released Market Garden module. Today we are to commence an assault onto the Arnhem bridgehead. This area is garrisoned by lots and lots of expertly trained allied paratroopers and is filled with these little buildings here in the air. As with all cities, perfect for those paratroopers and their little machine guns. We're given a light force to accomplish our task here, and with that sort of said, we need to pick out which objectives here we can take and which one we should take in order to win this mission, so to say. We don't have to take all of the green occupy zones, only a few of them. As such, I've deployed our troops here, facing the main road towards the bridge, and I plan on taking the building block here and the two school buildings to the front here too. At our disposal is about a company of Waffen-SS infantry, and also two vehicles, notably one flak gun armed half-track and a Stug assault gun. This mission also features a nice battery of artillery. Unfortunately, these artillery pieces aren't fully armed with ammunition. I'm going to get these guns to open up along the 5-minute mark, so after 5 minutes, after the match has begun, these artillery pieces will come in and they will smash the areas that we plan on taking. Now, as I said earlier, these American, or rather allied paratroopers are going to be armed to the teeth with submachine guns, and with that sort of said, it'll be essential to really pin them down early, and a little artillery barrage is what I think will accomplish that. And with that sort of said, the game begins and our troops start to move forwards. My goal at this point is to really grab the buildings facing the street, most notably the three big apartment blocks in the middle of the screen here, the white building and the two little side buildings, including the one with the little really big side window. Our troops are going to move up here, they're going to spread out, and they're going to deploy into these two buildings. I hope that the allies don't open up so far as to deploy our machine guns up here. As you may know, these machine guns take about 2 minutes and 40 seconds to deploy inside these buildings, and with that sort of said, I'd like to deploy them first before engaging the enemy. I move up a Panzerschreck team as a sort of a reconnaissance team, seeing as how they don't really have any much use inside these urban places. Unfortunately, this team was discovered moving up to one of the three buildings that we had planned to take, and the barrage of gunfire begins. Our machine guns are still setting up. The MG42 machine guns, they have a unique stance where they can be semi-deployed, meaning that they can still provide some fire even though they're not fully deployed, but as you can see, the fire inside this area is very heavy. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to get this third machine gun set up. The fire from those, what I presume to be Thompson machine guns, were just a little too much. The battle rages on as we try to gain fire superiority over the enemy. Our machine guns are fully set up now, and as you can probably tell, they're laying down quite a few bursts, but the allied troops are highly motivated and expertly trained, so they aren't so easily pinned. I'm still waiting for that mortar barrage, or rather artillery barrage, before we move in with any of our other troops, and at the current time, I'm starting to move up the tanks to deploy. As we get our Stug firing, the artillery barrage comes down and it smacks all of the buildings. We have a lot of Nebel Warfare artillery and a few field artillery pieces. They're highly destructive but not very accurate, so as you can probably tell, hit pretty much everything we had wanted to and a little bit more. With that sort of said, I wanted to keep our infantry back just for that reason. Our vehicles here are going to be the primary proponents of this advance. Our infantry just simply can't advance in the face of those allied automatics. I should note that the little flak half-tracks' cannon has actually enough firepower to demolish the sides of the structures. So with that sort of said, we're keeping them active and we're keeping them pin on the buildings, mainly for the purposes of opening the sides of the buildings where they don't have doors and allowing our infantry to advance through a covered route into the buildings here. Looks like the Allied artillery is starting to pull back a little bit. I'm rather surprised that the little flat calf track was actually able to collapse one of the buildings. But anyhow, with the nearest building block seemingly unoccupied, I moved up my stug to continue clearing out the road. Soon in the battle, we encounter the British paratroopers and their Piet anti-tank system. One unique thing found with the British forces is their recoilless launcher. It'd be a spring-loaded anti-tank weapon, and the nice thing about it is that they can fire it from buildings. You'll see here that the British paratroopers are trying to knock out my flak half-track, although they miss 2 of their shots. With the enemy fire dying down, I sense it's time to send in our troops, and we're going to try to take the first little building complex. So I send in 1 platoon or 1 squad of soldiers to try to take this area. As always, you should probably space out our guys. So I send them in 2 little waves here. The first one comes into this field. Surprisingly, one of our artillery rounds managed to make a little crater for them to sort of sit in, so that's nice. And the other troops are moving up too. It looks like our infantry has spotted some troops behind the building complexes here, and our forces are engaging. Unfortunately, our half-track doesn't seem to be able to engage these guys. It doesn't see it, apparently. And our infantry seems to be pinned, just going off of the little cavalry animations here. I was lucky that none of these troops were actually hit by any Thompson fire. That would have been pretty bad. After a while, our troops start to move back forwards, and I bring up the half-track to provide even more fire support. Our infantry are going to clear these buildings one by one, seeing as how if there are any paratroopers still alive inside of the buildings, there's a large chance that they'll be able to gun down at least 1 or 2 of our guys before being discovered, and even at that, we might not even be able to take care of them. How I like to advance inside these urban settings is that we want to isolate buildings, and what I mean by that is that we want to surround them with almost a 180-degree field of view around the building, and then after we've sort of isolated like that, we can then start to move troops towards the building, and in the event that there are still troops present, the people providing Overwatch should be able to put down enough suppression to either eliminate them or allow the troops assaulting to eliminate them. I've got to say, this flak half-track has been the most valuable unit so far. It's been gunning down all of these troops, and next to the red-bricked, red-shingled building, it's been able to gun down all of these troops just by itself. Surprisingly, I mean, for what it's worth, it carries a lot of ammunition. It's single-handedly propelling this assault. Our infantry here start to come under fire from the ersatz block of buildings. This linear line of buildings provides quite a bit of a challenge. None of these buildings are actually connected inside, and they all face the main road here, so we're going to have to sort of assault these buildings one by one to take them out. In the meantime, I'm starting to move up troops up to this red school building. It sort of looks like 2 warehouses to me, and our infantry are starting to move through it. Again, as we sort of move through the isolated buildings here, we begin to find more and more troops inside this E block of buildings. Our half-track on the street is taking care of some of the troops present, but I moved some of the troops into the back alley portion over here to deal with them. As you can see, the fire from the American squads are quite heavy. Eventually, some of the paratroopers inside the E-block start to panic and they rush out into the open where they are appropriately mowed down. Nonetheless, I mean, clearing this street will be fairly difficult, even if we control one side of the buildings. At our disposal are two of these little breach teams, and what they are essentially engineer-armed teams with demolition charges, and they're moving forward along with a platoon of infantry to clear this E-block from the inside. Again, Flak half-track doing an amazing job pinning down the troops inside the buildings, absolutely devastating. And I start to move some troops forward up to the next group of schoolhouse buildings. One unfortunate accident was there was some friendly fire with the Flak half-track. The game doesn't simulate friendly fire for infantry units just for the sake of keeping your own friendly losses low, although it does for those flak units, so you do have to be careful with them. In the meantime, my breaching squad moves forward here, and they start to demolish some of the walls inside this, what I presume to be a courtyard area or a yard area for these apartment buildings, and our troops start to move forward gradually. Forces are starting to stall over here, so I'll move up the flak half-track once we make sure there's no AT weapons, and it then provides more fire support for the infantry. I'm getting our infantry to move up throughout E-block. We're about halfway through the complex, and our infantry are starting to just essentially secure this area. We'll have to push out all of the infantry inside this green sort of overlay zone before we can truly claim this objective as ours, and with that sort of said, it'll be important to sweep out this entire row of buildings before we can sort of say it's ours and claim it. Again, breach teams move forward, smashing those walls instead of using those doors. Notice a few troops inside the backyard here, and our forces engage them, although they don't seem to be able to hit them properly. With the nearby section of E-blocks cleared, I'd move up some more infantry going to swarm that schoolhouse building. In the meantime, E-block is still being cleared slowly. E-block or the school building here seems to be empty. There's nothing particularly present inside it, though the adjacent areas are filled with allied paratroopers, the ones who've presumably fled this location in order to pull back to some other position. My original objectives are only to take these three places, the school, the other school, and the E-block apartment complex, although this is about 25 minutes into the game, and there's a 50-minute time limit, so I figured we might as well continue moving forwards. And how I want to do this is by moving our troops solely throughout this E-blocks. This is little side corners here. What the Germans did for buildings was that they would typically blow chunks inside the side of the walls and just advance through those, and likewise, I had about 6 more demolition charges, just enough to get us through this building complex. So I've decided to use the last of our breach teams here to just blast through these walls and to really press forward. I've got to say, assaulting buildings inside this game is a major pain in the butt, and with these breach teams, they just make things so much easier. As our troops sort of advance through here, they're nice and covered. The blast takes care of the vast majority of the enemies on the other side of the wall, and if they're not dead, they would be suppressed long enough for our troops to move in through here and knock them off like such. And with that sort of said, I get my breach teams to just bounce forward, clearing a nice little tunnel for our troops to move in through these buildings. Again, they're fairly protected from the fire on the sides, and so long as the enemy doesn't have an overwhelming amount of troops on the other side, we should be fine. When we reach the far side of the building complex, we note that there's a fair amount of fire coming from the adjacent little city area, O block. And with that sort of said, we press forward and I move some more infantry up. I move another platoon of infantry into the combat area, and I get them to, or rather I get one squad to enter this building complex. And because they have this nice little tunnel array set up, we can then get our troops to stream forward here. I did lose a breach team with, though we did use up all of their explosives to the people inside the neighboring city block. So with that sort of said, I'm going to assemble my troops inside one of these little buildings, and then once we amass enough troops, I'll start to press forward to the edge of the building complex. Also move up the flak half-track to provide support once again. At this point, the ammunition for it is running fairly low. It starts off with 200 rounds HG and 200 rounds armor piercing, or some variant of it. Our troops managed to eliminate the first squad inside the neighboring block of the cityscape, O block as it's called. Unfortunately, in the rear of the block, where our heavy fire support teams aren't able to reach, there seems to be quite a lot of allied paratroopers, and they're armed with the Sten machine guns and Thompson machine guns, so they're able to do a lot of damage inside these close-ranged groups. We were able to completely eradicate the little group inside that white building, though. At this point, we were out of explosives, and you may have noticed there's no way to actually go into O block from our current positions without being exposed either on the road or going around towards the milk factory area. And obviously, that location isn't exactly clear just yet, and it is filled with paratroopers. I noticed that the area around the bridge is fairly cleared. At this point, we've run out of ammunition for the half-track, so we can't exactly use it. Don't have any more demolition charges, though we do have AP ammunition for our Stug, so I move up our tank. A little bit risky pushing it up here, and this also brings the chance of friendly fire, obviously. But I wanted to demolish the wall next to our troops, so then our platoon of infantry inside the courtyard will be able to advance forward. I was kind of expecting the tank to take out the wall with like 1 or 2 shots, although it seems to have hit with the first one, and that was its last AP or high explosive shot, so it switched to armor piercing, and now it'll slowly demolish the wall. It takes a few more shots, but ultimately in the end it was able to demolish that wall, and the troops were able to stream through. At this point, I mean, the tank had very, very little use to us anymore, as direct fire sort of role was short on ammunition for its machine guns too, and notably the Stug just couldn't see the enemy infantry for the most part. At that point, I decided to surge our infantry through. We are armed with a few storm assault rifles, so I figured if we manage to take this white building and the adjacent 2 buildings, we might have a chance at taking down that enemy HQ, that paratrooper group up there. Unfortunately, more enemy paratroopers were unveiling themselves at this point, and our guys were just swarmed with bullets as they tried to advance here. I was kind of hoping that our troops would be able to overwhelm the one group of paratroopers right there, but unfortunately there was a second group in an adjacent building, again armed almost fully with those machine guns. Truly devastating. Our guys weren't able to advance at all, and they were just sort of gunned down inside these small, narrow alleyways. At this point, we still have about a platoon of reserves, though we aren't really in a state to move forwards. There's just no ammunition for our vehicles, and with that sort of said, there's really no way we can push into these blocks without them. So we end the game right here. Technically, none of the sides were able to accomplish their objectives, though we were able to hold 3 objectives, where actually the allies here were able to hold 3 objectives. It looks like we were also able to hold 3 objectives, though a lot of the points came from taking out the enemy. We were able to do a fair amount of damage, and as such, we were able to end the battle. As you can see here, the scenario designer has put a ton of allied units. You really do have to choose where you move inside this particular mission. You really got to choose those objectives carefully, seeing as how you can't complete all of them. This was played using Combat Mission Battle for Normandy and the Market Garden module. Had a ton of fun sieging this little area. As always, description and links will be inside the video box below. I'll see you guys later on, as always.